Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Gabriel Brent, and this is the APA Swing Pub. So, with that, let's get started here. All right, so in the APA Swing Pub, just to summarize for everybody, what we like to do is to give our analysis on what the markets are doing in general. Kind of just a cool time to check out what's going on in the marketplace in the big time perspective. We're using weekly, daily, and 60-minute charts here. Now, uh, what you're seeing here is the Apazone software applied to these different time frames. Now, the cool thing about Apazones is you can apply it all into one time frame. So we could get all of this data all into one time frame, but what we've decided to do here is to, to expose a little bit more than normal. Now, every single time price responds to one of these zones, it's going to change it a different color. So when price first retests the level, it's going to look like this. But really what we're trying to do here is not so much talk about the software, but talk about the markets and what we expect to have happen. So let's go ahead and get started here. On the Euro Weekly, this is what we are looking at here. A downtrend on the Euro, and looks like we had a nice little retracement that we talked about a couple weeks ago. And on our daily chart, which is our weekly time, or which is our context chart, we've been looking for the trend follow play, and sure enough, it has it's been working out here quite nicely. All right, so we are retesting the weekly zone, and on the daily chart, we're retesting this fresh and new aqua zone. So is price going to bounce up here? It very well could before it follows the trend to the downside. So I like to classify everything with a trend follow or counter trend setup here. All right, so counter trend, we're looking to the upside. Trend follow, we're looking to the downside. All right, so that's the two different perspectives that we have going on here on the Euro USD. So if that is our daily going on, all right, what are we looking for on our entry chart? Well, our entry chart, we're looking to jump on board. Okay, so again, it's nice to have three different time frames, so hopefully everybody can follow along. And even if you don't have the Premier Apazone software, this stuff should make sense. Okay, so basically, what this is telling us here is it is allowing us to see inside of the bigger time frames. Okay, and it allows us to get a good perspective as to where is a localized high and a localized low area that we can get on, because we're all trying to buy low, sell high, all that kind of good stuff. So as we look at this, we can see that we circled this area on the daily chart over here, and then we can come into this chart and we can actually look at, you see these two little rectangles here? We can actually kind of look at where those two little rectangles were on the big daily chart because of the cool features of NinjaTrader and how it overlays things. All right, so that's a little bit what we're doing here. And you can see prices dropped from this point here. So if you were lucky enough to get short during this time, things are working out pretty well. And right now we're basing here. We're really basing quite hard here on the 60-minute time frame. But I feel like this is a good area and a good understanding of why we're basing here. Okay, and what that area looks like and represents over here on the left side of our chart. Okay, so again, the market tends to move in waves, so it moves down, up, down. So once what was low down here, a lot of times will become what is high now. Okay, and I think that's really what we're seeing right here. All right, so I'm going to continue to look for the trend being down. Even though we are hitting that level on the weekly charts, I'm going to be looking for price to be pushing through that. Okay, so let's move right along here. All right, so we've had kind of a downtrend on the weekly time frame. Just to get a bigger perspective, we are testing a fresh and new weekly supply zone, okay, or resistance zone here. And if we come down into our context chart, well, let's clean up things just a little bit here since we've kind of been drawing on this chart for the past few weeks here. All right. So this is what we're looking at right now. All right. So we've come into this big weekly area, and we've started to push down. Okay. Now I need to make sure that this is most current here. So let me refresh my chart. All right. There we go. That's better. That's better. All right, so those are our two fresh levels that we have on our chart. Okay, these are the most direct and prominent levels that we're looking at. Okay, so we've pushed down to the south side here, and we're looking at some support right now. But on the weekly time frame, it looks like we're really just coming out of this big weekly supply zone. All right, so my first thoughts would be for this area to break and for us to get a bigger push to the downside here on the Aussie dollar. So then on the smaller time frame, it's just all about getting in. You know, that's what it's all about on the smaller time frame. You know, uh, basically using smaller stops, smaller targets, even though we're playing things off of the daily time frame as far as our context goes. Okay, let's go ahead and move along. Euro pound, pretty much the same thing. We are retesting the lows here on the big weekly. So on the daily chart, let's see what our current levels look like here. So the current levels, we're looking at something like this, trend follow to the downside, represented by this. So if trend follows to the downside, everything to the long side would be counter trend, right? Makes sense there. All right, so coming to the upside here is all counter trend. I'm basically looking at this area as I'm looking for a good pullback to get into like a trend follow short. So these are two areas that we circled last week. And it looks like we're kind of hitting one area right now that we circled last week. So I'm just going to keep these areas circled. Again, you know, this is swing trading on these charts. So these are pretty massive levels. And we're really just trying to run with the overall direction of trend. First and foremost, run with trend and worry about everything else later. So I like those two levels. If we come into this chart here, into our 60-minute time frame, it's gone a little bit higher than this, it looks like. So obviously we don't want to be looking at those two levels as being short, just because we've gone a little bit higher than where that circle is drawn out here. So what was resistance is now kind of support. So let's go look at the higher zone above this. Okay, so those are the two levels up there. So possibly there could be a trend follow short to the downside, but the longs look like they're pretty counter trendy when we take into perspective that daily and weekly time frame. All right, so let's go over to the euro yen. Now the euro yen has been a very interesting one. We knocked out some previous supply here, Okay, we've come down, we've knocked out some previous supply that was here. We had the zones drawn, and I'm really looking for this thing to trend follow to the upside, is what we were looking at last week. So we will see if that continues to happen, if we can break this high up here. But if you were lucky enough to possibly buy at the low of this daily zone, that was a really great place to be looking for a buy, as it failed to break lower. It failed to break the bottom of this level. And now we're kind of getting supply and demand overlapping each other, which is interesting. I'm not going to get too deep into that just because it's more like Apazones like theory. But if we're just looking at the price bars, this was a nice little pop down here for possibly a trend follow up here to the top. Okay, so we'll see what happens. Again, I kind of feel like this area is flip-flopping. So what was resistance is now becoming support in the bigger time frames on the daily and the weekly levels. So that's what I'm looking at here, and very nice for the idea of the long coming out of the bottom of that zone that we just saw. So, and again, if you're trying to get long, we can use the 60-minute time frames to come in here and to help us in the execution of the long position to tighten up our targets and stops and all that type of good stuff. Okay. So real great little money bounce right there off of that zone. So really, really cool there. And, buy low, sell high, right? I'm going to keep it that type of simplicity all the time. All right, so let's go look at the ES here. Now, on the ES, we are making new highs. So we've had quite the range that we're bouncing back and forth in between. We've made new highs. On the daily time frame, you can kind of see some of the levels that we had already outlined. So let's go ahead and turn on just the current zones here, so you can kind of see what those levels look like. I do have some drawings on here, so let me go ahead and take those off. And this is just because we do a lot of analysis in the Apazones room, and we look at this market quite a bit. So there's some nice clean charts for you. And, as we've been doing and hosting the Swing Pub here, we've been looking at this market just to give us an overall direction of the indexes and how they're flowing and going. So that's what this looks like here. Looks like we kind of failed to break the high. Okay, so we touched it, but it's failed to break the high. So we'll see what down here looks like, And once what was high is now becoming low, and I kind of have a feeling that that's kind of what's happened here. This thing could chop around a whole lot more, as it's been really quite rangy for the past few months here. If you look at March, it started to get into quite the big range, and we've gotten the breakout of the range, but it hasn't been a very solid breakthrough. So the epitrender is now green and has a good slope on it, so those are all good signs to the long side, but we're still slowly doing stuff here. So very interesting. Right now I'm going to hand things over to my good buddy John. John, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me? Hello?
I'm having a hard time hearing you, but I do see you talking.
Hello?
Okay, I think I had my speak. John, are you there now?
Hello?
Hey, there you are.
How's
Sorry,
it going?
I think I had my system muted here. So, all right, I'm doing good, my friend, doing good. So, so John, do you want to share with us some of the stuff that you've been looking at here?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
All right. Would you like to be presenter, or would
Yeah,
you
you can
want?
do that. You can
Okay.
do that. Hold on a second. All right. Do show my screen. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So, yeah, kind of a mixed bag week. You can kind of see from what Gabe was saying, on the ES, we've been in, you know, kind of a messy range. We broke out, but we weren't able to, extend to the upside. And when you have the broad markets and kind of going to broad ranges, well, you have some that are outperforming and some that aren't. So really, anything kind of involved with the NASDAQ this week was pretty good. We pushed higher to the top of the daily range, and let's look at some of positions that ended up having that did pretty good. So yeah, here was Intel right here. Entered it back on I think 513, and we were able to push up higher and yeah, hit a T1 at about 34.20, I think 34.10, something like that. And yeah, we were in this range. The context was from this weekly in the sense that we had come to the bottom, we consolidated, we started seeing price action events such as this trend line break, this higher low, along with this higher high here. They're kind of indicating to us, well, the momentum is now on the upside, and this area should be respected once it gets there. But uh, just the basic, nature of price action. Well, we got a magnet right up here at 37.77, so was just looking for the push up to here to hit a T1. We got it, and now look for a price to continue to the upside. A loser that we had this week was, here we go, Ford, and was able to hit a T1 on it, but ultimately, came and it got me my own one tick today, and I had entered this another time from when I did a original entry back, back here, was able to take another entry right here, hit a T1, and then it's just been kind of meandering, and it's come back and yeah, stopped me out of the position. One that really just didn't go so well at all, and ultimately at the end of the day, it was a poor entry on my part. So I mean, my context is certainly, even though on this weekly standpoint we have been green, this deeper pullback here that takes this pivot out, comes through the trender, is coming to the extreme of my weekly zone, but we saw a big move up, and then at some point, especially once crossing below 109.96, it seems like we're going to be magnetized back towards the extreme here. So even though this was an aggressive type of entry, and we wait for price to consolidate upon hitting my weekly. It does, and then on the second entry signal, we took a long, and we just didn't have any follow through at all. We came and we pushed back down, um, and it's a counter trend trade, and we can easily have price deeper, uh, retrace deeper into that zone, which is why it's really important when you're doing counter trend type of trades, you're playing bottom of ranges, you generally want to, see a move where it would have been much better for me to have just wait this consolidation happen, see if we can at least push up and retest this orange zone. We don't have to break it, but show me that there's definitely some momentum going on with this buying here, and then wait for a retest of that consolidation. But we're making a lower low. It's very possible that we eventually get a a bounce back towards the upside this weekly zone holds. But before I even go long again or consider going long, I'm going to want to see a move that's able to take this trend line out. So we win some, we lose some, and I'm still definitely in the process of learning from my entries. But we had another real nice. Oh no, did my thing break? Sometimes my my
Yeah, your data gets
my
stuck
data
up there.
just breaks. I don't know why. Yeah.
Yeah, that always
And
isn't fun.
yeah. Yeah, but that's about that's about it for me. I mean, I think the thing going into next week is you could easily see a continued push to the downside on some of these instruments. Um, you know, especially on the CES, we could definitely see that deeper pullback towards 2070. And it's more from a standpoint at this point, like you got your shallow pullback recently to the daily zone that you see in the middle. You tried bouncing back up, and then you failed. You weren't able to really push into that top zone, and it seems like the real demand is more around 2080, 2070. So if it doesn't get there, that's fine. But just from an odds standpoint, that's probably at this point the pullback that you want to wait for to engage this type of market rather than the pullback that's going on right here. And that's just from a daily standpoint. So we'll kind of see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we just continue to get that tight consolidation that's going on the weekly, or if we start finally seeing some expansion one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have a question for you real quick, John.
Sure.
On UNP, which chart are you using for your context chart, the weekly or the daily?
Weekly.
The weekly?
A weekly
Okay.
on that one, yes.
Okay. So, I hope that answers your question, but that's kind of what he was looking for. So, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
No problem.
So, let's look at bonds just to see what's going on here. Actually, let's start with the biggest time frame, where we'd be looking at supply and demand coming into play. All right, so on this this big weekly chart, we can see that price failed to break the high, and it looks like we're coming all the way back down here to like the 49 or 149 area. Is a good possible area for price to find a magnet, as John calls it. So on the daily time frame, which is where I like to personally pull my context from, and we're going to simplify this down just a little bit here. We've seen that failure price action to break the high. We've seen a dramatic move to the downside. Like this is actually a pretty good trending motion. Unlike the indexes and stuff, this is pretty clean. So I think that's very interesting. So it looks like we were looking for price to pop up here a little bit, and I would say that it has. Now, is it going to break this resistance zone? Well, if we're really in a downtrend, I would say no. No, it is not. Resistance should hold if we're in a downtrend, which is where this apotrender is painting our background red. So looking for that context to hold firm there. All right. So could this be a good area to join the trend to the south side? Sure. Has it confirmed itself yet? I don't think so. But the possibilities are there. With any market, you know, the market can do anything that it wants to do. So I need to make sure that when we're looking at something like this, that it really is our setup that we are executing from. Okay, so if we're looking at this level as being interesting here, what does that level look like here on our smaller time frame? Okay, and this is what we see. Okay, at the top here, we do have a 60-minute level where the daily zone forms. Just above the daily zone, we see a fractal zone forming, and on a smaller time frame, which is our 60-minute here, and we can see price pushing into that level just a little bit, but it is really respected that level overall, and it's coming down to support here. Okay, so it looks like it's got a little bit further to go, but not too far before it hits that support level. Notice the consolidation and then the rapid expansion as it leaves this area here. So I think that's very, very interesting. Looks like my zone may be drawn off just a little bit, but that's okay. It is what it is. And as we're looking at this level, yes, it would have been extremely nice to find an entry here off of the 60-minute time frame here earlier today. That was really cool to see that big red candle come into play. But you know, it's hindsight is trading sometimes. So it looks like we have a little bit further to push down here before we're retesting the aqua zone, and but this would be in the direction of what we're defining as a trend from our daily time frame. So I like to look at the daily time frame to define trend, and then the smaller time frame for entry. Weekly time frame is kind of there to just give me a general understanding of supply and demand in the big term perspective, but I really like to pull my context from the daily charts. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to everybody. And now we're going to go into live questions and answers. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. So if this is your first time watching our weekly wrap-up and forecast. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I let you guys go, I'm just going to draw out a couple quick lines here, because we like to do that, or I like to do that a lot, just for an overall idea of trend, because if we can define the trend, well, we've got a lot of stuff going for us then. Okay, so if you guys have questions, or if you guys would like to participate in our weekly swing pub, please feel free to do so. It is held on every Friday, right around the same time. And we do like to post our swing pubs in our weekly emails that we send out to everybody concerning all the different educational events that we are hosting here at AppleZone. So I want to say thank you for everybody in the audience today. We are going to go into a live question and answer period as we continue our analysis. But for everybody watching the video, I just want to say thank you for watching, and we hope to see you here next week in person. So thank you very much.